Hello, my name is Alejandra Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be your guide throughout this three-part video series on all things about the Visa Bulletin. This video is part one of three. So if you are barely starting off with the resource, you are in the correct spot. We're going to get into everything about the Visa Bulletin. I am a youth organizer with the SIJS Backlog Coalition, and we are a national group of directly impacted youth in over 150 allied advocate organizations across the country. We're actively working to bring an end to the SIJS backlog through different advocacy measures, and we're very happy and excited that you have found this resource. But before really getting into the content of the resource, I did want to give a quick disclaimer that I am not a lawyer, and although there are attorneys in the coalition itself does not represent clients in legal matters, and we do not give legal advice. So the content of this first video and the videos that follow are really for informational purposes only. If there are specific questions or things that come up for you about your case as you're watching these videos, we recommend that you direct those questions to your immigration attorney or an immigration attorney in general. So this first video is going to cover what you need to know about Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. We're going to cover what the backlog is, why it exists, and really just prepare you for the next two videos that are really diving more deep into the Visa Bulletin. So beginning with talking about Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, or SIJS for short, as you will hear me say throughout the resource and in the other videos, it was created by Congress in 1990. SIJS is an immigration protection that if it is granted, it may also be a path to getting your green card, which is very relevant to what we're talking about today, since those resources really center around the Visa Bulletin. Now, undocumented children and youth who are under 21 years old and who have experienced some form of abuse, abandonment, or neglect by a parent or both parents may qualify for SIJS. In addition to having to meet those requirements, a state court judge has also ordered that it is in the best interest of that specific child, that specific person, to stay within the United States. Today in this resource, in these videos, we're not going to be going into the details of the process that somebody goes through to actually get SIJS. If you're watching this and you have Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, you're already an expert on what that looks like since you have experienced that and you have that lived experience. So we're not going to be touching on that today in the video. Now, the last fact that you're going to see on the screen before we move on is that SIJS was placed in the employment-based visa category. This is very important for our conversation, and we're going to get a lot more into it as the resource progresses. So another important part about SIJS is the I-360 form, which you're going to see an example of on the screen right now. So after a process with the state court, which is not going to be covered in the video, this is what someone who is eligible for SIJS would fill out with an attorney to officially apply for SIJS. Officially, the I-360 form is known as a petition for special immigrants. If you've heard an attorney or your attorney say, you're petitioning for SIJS, petitioning for special immigrant juvenile status, something along those lines, that's what they mean when they're saying that. And the SIJS petition is filed to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Agency, more commonly referred to as USCIS, and as you'll hear me say throughout the resource, as USCIS. They are one of the agencies in the US Department of Homeland Security, and they're the ones that are approving special immigrant juvenile status petitions. So once a person gets approved, they officially have SIJS, they officially have special immigrant juvenile status. And after submitting this form to USCIS, you will receive back what is called a receipt notice of your I-360 form. So this receipt notice is very important, and it's another really key part to the conversation around the Visa Bulletin because it has your priority date. Now, if you're watching this and you've had SIJS for a while, whether it's a few months or a few years, you may already know what a priority date is. But if you are not familiar with a priority date, your priority date is the date that USCIS received your SIJ petition, and it also marks your place in line for a green card. I'm going to repeat that one more time because I'm probably going to repeat it a few times throughout the resource. But your priority date is the date that USCIS received your SIJ petition, and it also marks your place in line for a green card. I want to be clear that a priority date is a personal number. That date will never change. So your personal priority date is never going to change. It's your personal date. It's always going to stay the same. Now, on the screen, you'll see an example of how you can find your priority date. This is a scan of an I-360 receipt, and we have highlighted in yellow and circled in red where it says priority date. So you can find it on that I-360 receipt or also on your approval notice. It will also have your priority date listed. Again, I-360 is just the number of the form used for the SIJ petition, and it's very important because it has your priority date, which is another very important thing because it indicates your place in line while you're waiting for a green card, okay? So that is, I would say, some like basic information that you need to know about SIJ and these other components about SIJ so that we can now talk a little bit more about the backlog and why the backlog exists. So USCIS can approve an endless number of SIJ petitions per year, but they can only give out a certain number of green cards. In recent years, so USCIS has been approving more SIJ petitions than the actual number of green cards that they can give out. So when they are approving your petition, what they're really saying is that you're allowed to get in line for your green card. And then you wait in this really long line, a line that can take years. But when you finally get to the front of the line, you're allowed to ask for your green card. That's essentially what they're saying when your petition is being approved. And you may be asking yourself, why is there only a certain number of green cards they can get out each year? And in order for us to really talk about that more and to understand that, we have to talk about the visa category that SIJ falls into. When I say category, I am talking about the type of visa that you have. The term category is illegal. It's a term that is used to put different visas into buckets with a label. And so, you know, for a reason that we really don't understand and makes absolutely no sense, and I want to make that very clear, we don't understand why it is like this and it doesn't make any sense, but SIJ was categorized as an employment-based visa in the EB4 category. So the specific category that SIJ is in is called the EB4 category. And as a whole, it's in the employment-based visa category. So these are visas that are available for people who are coming to the US for the purpose of work. Like I said, we don't understand why they chose this category for SIJ. SIJ is meant to protect immigrant children and youth, so it doesn't make any sense that it would be placed in this category. But because SIJ is categorized under the employment-based visas, it has limitations. And the biggest issue here is that there is a limited number of employment-based visas available each year. And right now, there are more people that are seeking their green cards than the actual number of green cards that are available. This has resulted in a very large backlog that we have been calling the SIJ backlog, hence the name of the coalition, the End SIJ Backlog Coalition. And it's really why we are in the situation that we are in today, with thousands of special immigrant juvenile status youth waiting in this backlog, waiting in line. And it's why we're talking about the visa bulletin today, because everybody right now, unfortunately, who has special immigrant juvenile status and is applying to get SIJ is in the backlog. There's nobody with SIJ that is not in the backlog. And so there are thousands of youth like yourself who may be watching this video who are just anxiously waiting for their opportunity to be able to apply for their green card. So this is a lot of information about SIJ and the backlog, just to really give you some context and some background. And I want to recap some of the key points covered in this video before you move into the next two videos that will dive in deeper into talking about the actual visa bulletin. The first point being that SIJ is a humanitarian protection for youth under 21 who have experienced some form of abuse, abandonment, or neglect by a parent. The second point is that the I-360 form is what youth eligible for SIJ file in order to be granted SIJS, Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. The third point is that you can find your priority date on your I-360 receipt that USCIS sends you after you file for SIJ. Remember that this is very important for our conversation. Your priority date is the date that USCIS received your petition, and it also marks your place in line for a green card, okay? The last point that you'll see on the screen is that the SIJ visa was put into the EB4 category, where there is a limited number of green cards available each year, thus leading to what we now know as the SIJ backlog. So that is all the content we're going to cover in this first video. Before moving into the second video, like I had mentioned before, we are a national group working on advocating for solutions to the SIJ backlog now for almost 4 years. You can see on the screen right now some of the projects that we're working on, but our work is really not possible without the input and voices of impacted youth who are a part of the coalition. So I hope that you will consider joining. So on the screen, you'll see a QR code where you're able to officially sign up and join the coalition. And in the description of this video, you will find links to the forum and to our social media account if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're watching this on our website, then you can also find those links on the webpage as well. So thank you all so much for watching the first part, and I will see you in the second part of this resource.